gender and corruption, but women's rights and corruption. So I want to contest that corruption actually affects and impacts men and women differently. So we have to look at that layering of men and women, but also look at the demographics and the intergenerationality. That once again, corruption affects older, more settled people.
So there's accountability and no one is left behind, as you rightly pointed out. Like I said, there's an echo and I can't even hear myself, so maybe I'm misdirecting myself.
So Dr. Matusi, I wanted to ask you specifically, based on your experience of working on corruption, advising the government, what are the challenges in effective partnerships, either with donors, working with external partners, and working within government that you've seen have made it very difficult to practically combat corruption? I imagine there are cases of duplicity of effort. Duplication of effort. I imagine there are cases of lack of resourcing of certain institutions. I imagine there's a lack of information sharing. These are things I've come across, but I'm curious in your experience, what are those challenges and what is it that we can do better going forward?
I think moderator has already provided the answer. As I said earlier on, we do have different organizations here in Botswana that are given different mandates, but they're all working towards the fight against corruption. And what I can say is that even though they have that responsibility, I'm not convinced that they are working together as one would expect them to. And I'm saying this because in 2013, 2014, I was a member of the National Reference Group that was given the task of coming up with an anti-corruption policy here in Botswana. And that policy was designed in such a manner that it had to facilitate sharing of information amongst these organizations, or we were thinking of bringing them together so that they can work together, so that they can pull their resources together, so that the left hand could know what the right hand is doing and vice versa. Right now, you have the police, Botswana Police Service, you have the DCEC, you have the intelligence agency, you have a financial intelligence agency, and I'm not convinced that they are all working together. They may be cooperating here and there, but I think in the absence of a coherent public policy, bringing them together, guiding them in terms of how they can share resources and work together, we will continue to have gaps here and there. As you rightly pointed out, information sharing is very important, and if we don't have anything to guide the operations of these organizations in terms of how they can share information, then we will continue having gaps here and there, and we'll continue having people who are very much interested in corruption getting away with that crime or offense. So my view is that in the absence of that policy, then we will continue talking about corruption, and these organizations will continue working as independently, or there won't be that cooperation and coordination. And when it comes to international organizations, I'm not too sure as to how the different organizations are dealing with international organizations. And again, in the policy that we drafted, we made that provision in terms of how all these organizations can be brought together and how they can cooperate with international organizations.
Yes, Madam Moderator, the question of cooperation really is very, very important. It plays a central role in the fight against corruption. We cannot succeed without it. There is a need really for all law enforcement agencies, even the agencies which are not law enforcement, to cooperate in the fight against corruption. It is very important. I have seen it working for us in many incidences. By profession, I'm a police officer, and I've seen it working for us. If we have this revenue authority, if we have police, and we have anti-corruption, I tell whoever criminal, no matter how clever he is, he's not going to make it. Can't make it. If we succeed actually undermining the revenue authority, the police, the anti-corruption is going to get you. The laws actually are crafted in such a way that you will be trapped in the web, in the net. And if you survive that one, dark or blue with revenue authorities, you are not going to make it. You know why? Because the criminals do not want or like to pay tax. No doubt about that. So if there is a cooperation between those, dark or blue, you are going to get it. And also the internal audit of the public departments. Those are very vital. Equally, there is a need as well for regional and international organizations cooperation. Even inter-countries cooperation, interstate cooperation is very important. You know what is beating us in fighting corruption? You find that a criminal actually loots from Botswana and runs to Lesotho. Once he gets there, there is a bureaucratic need to go through this office and that one before you can get information as to what kind of money has been transferred to Lesotho or what property does this criminal owns in Lesotho. You spend 6 months not knowing what is going on. That kind of bureaucracy gives us a great challenge, and really South Africa should work on that. It has to work on that. Because if Africa itself cannot cooperate with each other, African countries cannot cooperate with each other, what do you expect of Europe? We have been actually saying that the Europeans are not cooperating. But how about Africans? Botswana, Lesotho, Swaziland, and South Africa, are we cooperating with each other enough? Are we giving each other enough cooperation? That's a great gap. And the criminals have realized that they are maneuvering us. They are taking advantage of that. You know that if you have crossed the border, they will never get you. So cooperation is very, very important. There is a need to cooperate with civil service, civil society as well. But you know the problem that I have, which I have experienced, which actually I'm appealing, especially to our brothers in the media fraternity, please do not put the cart before the horse. Immediately you have information about the criminal syndicate, you rush to publicize that. By so doing, what are you doing? You are equipping the very same criminal with all the arsenals to avoid to be detected. So always we are being accused, madam, of being very secretive. Sometimes we do that because we want to make sure that we are very close to the target. But our brothers, please, while it is very important that we need to balance the two. While there is a need for the public to get information, but at the same time, there is a need to balance that so that we may not let the criminal be aware of what is going on and run away with whatever we are chasing him for. Thank you.
So you can apparently use your own mic, but
It's not coming on. I want to push back a little. I think the biggest partner in the fight against corruption are the citizens. One, because they are unstructured. Two, because they are all over. Three, because they're the most cost-effective. Four, because they are sold on to the fight against corruption because they bear the biggest brand. So I would be keen to hear from both Lesotho and Botswana what kind of structures and provisions are in place for witness protection, for whistleblower protection. So that, I mean, if a criminal moves to the next location, it's actually the citizens there who'd be able to know and advise the institutions fighting against corruption. So just some clarity on what kind of structures are in place to actually protect citizens as the biggest stakeholder in fighting corruption.
I think this one should be answered more by the DCEC. But what I know is that citizens are free to report anyone to the DCEC here in Botswana. And the expectation is that their identity will not be revealed. That is to say, they will be protected. But we have had cases, isolated cases here and there where some of the people who have reported corruption cases to the relevant authorities where their identity ended up being revealed, and some individuals lost their jobs. And I know the politicians here, especially from the opposition bloc, have been calling for the introduction of the Whistleblower Act so that people can be protected. But I know the DCEC is trying hard to protect the identity of all the people who talk to them or alert them on corruption cases.
There you are. Thank you very much, madam. I have to confess, with regard to this one, we are not very strong. In Lesotho, the Directorate on Corruption and Economic Offences has a section which seemingly protects informants and witnesses. But it is not very strong. It is not comprehensive enough. It says that if anybody cannot be taken to task for giving information to the DCEO, whether from even if it's a secret, you cannot be taken to task disciplinarily for having divulged as a secret from the office. Well, that is it, but it is not enough. I know we have used it against someone from the Department of Treasury gave us information, and his boss knew for some reason that he is the one who had leaked the information. And then he was on the verge of transferring him because of that. Then we had to write to him, telling him that be aware that that person is protected. The fact that he has given information to the CEO, we have no authority to do anything against him. Fortunately, that person stopped, because actually it makes it a criminal offense if we can take action against such a person. Even civilly, you cannot take one to task for having divulged the information. Well, that is not enough. We are now on the verge of amending our law, whereby we are strengthening that section to make it a point that even witnesses could be given physical protection when it arises. That is where another thing which actually calls for cooperation, because of the fact that, let's say, for instance, Lesotho is not that big. We are of a population of about 2 million and something. Then we can easily know each other. So if we cooperate, it could be easy for me to say, my brother in Botswana, can you take care of this person at least for 6 months before we go for trial? And he could also dedicate one of his witnesses, the most important ones, to go to Lesotho, and we take care of him for a while. That is very important. That's where cooperation really is needed. And our big brother there in South Africa, he has a bigger population. We can be able to hide them there. So it is very important that we cooperate with each other so that we could protect our witnesses. I want to share with you a small thing which happened in Lesotho, incidents which happened in Lesotho, whereby we had a case of procurement against one of the high-profile people. And that case was tracked for a year. On the second year, after 6 months, the first witness died. Well, that was a natural death. The only crucial witness which was left was one. And I think the culprit realized that actually I have one. If I can do away with this one, then I'm off hook. You know what? Immediately 3 or 4 days before we go for trial, that someone was killed, shot. He was shot dead. And really, although we did not have a concrete evidence as to who has done it, we suspected that this person has been eliminated by who? By the suspect. And as we speak, we couldn't continue with that case. That man is free now. He walks free. He is even boasting that you said I was corrupt and there is nothing happening to me. What do you mean? So we have a problem and we need to cooperate. That is one of the bigger gaps that we have to really take care of. Thank you.
That's a very sobering reminder of how dangerous it is actually to work with the government in case of anti-corruption. So my last question for the panel relates to another comment that you made earlier about the importance of African countries to cooperate together. And if we fail to cooperate, we can't really expect much of others to cooperate with us. And that reminds me of the discussion that we had yesterday and Brian Kagoro's comments about illicit financial flows and taxation. And that reminded me of this paper that was written by Professor Leonce Ndikumana, working with James Boyce, one of the originators in this field. And in a recent paper, he reminded us again that Africa is a net creditor to the world, losing more in capital flight than it receives in official development assistance, foreign direct investment, and imputed earnings on portfolio investment. And so if the primary issue in this field, in the battle of corruption, remains taxing illicit financial flows and trying to reclaim the capital flight that we continue to lose more in resources, my question in terms of cooperation then, if we need it so badly, why aren't we doing it? How can we strengthen it? Are we all members of the African Tax Administrators Forum? Are we engaging with the AU Illicit Financial Flows Panel? Are we living up to the commitments and the declaration that exists? I'm not sure that we are, and how can we do better? Because what I would absolutely not want is for us to have to come back to this conversation 5 years from now where we're still making these large declarations and commitments, but they come up short. So my question to all of you is, how can we engage, how can we make cooperation meaningful at this moment with all of the political championing that we have from our governments and leaders? We have all the frameworks in place, but we're still losing more. How can we change that?
You know, every time we talk about Agenda 2063, it hits me over and over again that at that time I'll be 83 years old. So actually, Agenda 2063 is not for me. I don't know how many of us will be around at that time. So there's a lot of work and contribution that we need to make towards that. As a youngish person on the continent, one of the concerns I have, even as we plan for 2063, is when I see the rate at which my continent is being divided up. When I see the kind of deals we are making with countries that are much smaller than some of our countries, and yet we are selling our continent for free. So I think in terms of collaboration, it's the interregional collaboration where you find beneficiaries of corruption and criminals are running between our countries. You commit a crime in South Sudan, but you come to Kenya, you buy a house, you set up a business, and life goes on as usual. So that interregional collaboration, I think, that has also already been shared. But I think it's a collaboration within the continent between our countries on how we jointly negotiate. So when you look at the costs of some of the infrastructure projects that are taking place on the continent, the cost of building a railway is different in Kenya than it is in Tanzania, than it is in Nigeria. The cost of building a bridge similarly. And yet I think now when we look at the Continental Free Trade Agreement, we're talking about a common Africa, a common agenda, common trade obligations, opening up Africa for intra-Africa trade. So I think it's time that we came together and spoke with one voice in terms of how we now negotiate with other continents and other stakeholders on how we want to be dealt with, on what kind of infrastructure we want, so that they don't do a road that ends right on the borders of Kenya and Tanzania or Ghana and the next country, but how we negotiate that those roads actually connect and open up the continent so that we can actually have the free movement of people across Africa.
Thank you. I think my colleagues have said it all. Earlier on, Re Motsotsho, he talked about the difficulties that are experienced by the anti-corruption agencies to extradite people from one country to the other. I think that should be the starting point, where countries should all agree that it shouldn't really be very difficult for Bashimu Muthusi to be taken from Lesotho and be brought back to Botswana to come and stand trial for corruption. Any country that decides not to cooperate should be seen as one that is promoting corruption. I mean, movement of people, especially those who are involved in criminal activities, shouldn't really be a difficult thing to do. And then the other thing I think that can be done is to share information. I don't think African countries are sharing information as one would like them to do. And if I am involved in criminal activities here in Botswana, and I appear in the record of the DCEC, I think all the anti-corruption agencies in Africa should be having that database where they know the people, or they have access to information, to the details of all the people who are troublesome in all these countries, so that if they talk about Bashimu Muthusi, all the agencies must be alerted that there's this person here. So I think we should do more in terms of sharing information and in terms of ensuring that all the corrupt people, all the criminals can be easily moved from one country to the other. Otherwise, we will continue protecting all these people here.
Thank you very much, Madam. Conformity and collaboration is very vital to Africa now than any time before. More especially because we realize that we are the only continent which is still a virgin in many respects. So every jig and gel from anywhere comes to Africa to explore. And we need to tighten our rules. We need to collaborate more. Especially because the issue of corruption, you know, we had a case in Lesotho when we were embarking on the first phase of Lesotho Highlands Water Project, whereby our chief executives were approached by who? Guess, by these guys from overseas, the conglomerates from overseas. And they showed them the pairs. Oh, greedy people, they had to go for that. And we had to do what? We had to go for them, go for the conglomerates, and we ended up charging them in the course of Lesotho. And for the first time, really, they tried all the tactics that they could do, even changing the names at their countries of origin. But we managed to put them to order. So it is very important that we share information as Africans. The African nations should share information, and we at least should conform with what is required by the AU Convention. You know, we have a very, very rich convention. It's very rich. If we could only implement it really and mirror whatever appears in it in our national legislation, really we will win this fight. I am a little bit encouraged to see that at least AU this time around, it's up on its feet. I've received an information that actually they want to visit my country to see how far we have gone. And this should have been happening, it should have happened a long time ago. To say, where are you? Why are you not implementing the convention as it is? Let's see your legislation. That is also very, very helpful. It would be very helpful because no country would like to be questioned like that. We are not being persecuted, but we are being asked, are you actually conforming with the AU? The UN Convention now, UN has introduced the peer review, whereby countries are reviewing each other. What about the AU? Where have we been? That's the gap, madam. We need to close that. But I'm happy that they have started, and I hope they should go on. Let us keep up the momentum. That could be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you to my panel. That was my last question that I wanted to share. So to open up the floor and to make this more of an inclusive conversation, I just wanted to first of all pick up and repeat some of the findings. So from the conversation that we've had so far, it seems that although we have all the frameworks in place, cooperation still remains a huge challenge. We don't have sufficient whistleblower protection mechanisms. We don't have witness protection mechanisms that keep people safe, those who come forward in corruption scandals. We also don't share information as extensively as we should, and we certainly don't resource our institutions as much as we should be and cooperate with them as well as international stakeholders. I also noted that we talk a big game about gender inclusivity, but this remains a huge challenge. We possibly have something to learn from Lesotho and our colleagues there, but I suggest that that's an area as well, that even the AU remains challenged. And it's a challenge for all of us in this forum to take this meeting forward in our work. The challenge overall for me is one of implementation. So if we're going to take this serious, this conversation on anti-corruption seriously, my sense is we all have to hold our governments to account, AU institutions to account to implement. It's a challenge of implementation. It's not of principles and law and frameworks. So with those few comments, I wanted to open up the floor for discussion. We have about 45 minutes. So any questions from the floor? I'll take about 10 questions. So 5 from this side and 5 from that side. So in the spirit of how we've been engaging, we'll proceed with the numbers. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up at the front here. And on this side, there's 2 ladies in the back waving. I'll recognize the 2 of you first. And then this lady in front, 4 and 5. Yes. The floor.
And I think that's why it is successful. But some of the CSOs that we have tend to have many kind of programs, and they fall on the wayside. They also have issues of resources, issues of dedication, and that is why it is sometimes difficult to continue to engage with them. The other thing, as we have seen from colleagues from Lesotho, is that they tend to be driven by an agenda. It's not all about prevention. It's about trying to investigate, get the facts, and try to take the cases to court and trace assets, recover assets, and prosecution. So this is where we can also differ. I think the third issue is that corruption may be colorless. We could recognize it in any context. In any jurisdiction, we can recognize the shape of corruption. But to fight it sometimes requires local approaches, because it tends to be characterized by the local context. And that is why some jurisdictions, like in this country, are successful in fighting corruption than others. So we should not, as much as we invite collaboration and learning from others, we should also give emphasis to local approaches in combating corruption. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I just want to pick up something from what Kijara has said. You've underscored the importance of the partnership with the citizens. And then you kind of picked up whistleblowers. But my question is, what kind of strategy or partnership can we construct with the citizens on whose behalf many of us actually say we are fighting this fight? What we actually often see in many cases is that citizens are always voting against their own interests. Citizens seem to acknowledge that for as long as you are stealing from the government, that is not misappropriation, it's just restoration. You are our thief for as long as you can steal from the capital and return to the countryside and take care of us. But if they are the key partners in this war against graft, what kind of partnership can we construct with them? My next point is on the sort of relationship or partnership we can have with donors. I mean, donors play a critical role in funding some of the work that we do, but at the same time, in the respective countries where donors are, especially the bilateral donors and the different funding mechanisms they put up in place, they prefer to play safe. They do not want to do anything that would seem to antagonize the government in which they are resident. And therefore, they will not support any form of litigation. And to an extent, I dare say that sometimes they do not understand the sector which they actually purport to support. In that kind of situation, what sort of relationship, what sort of partnership can we really be able to construct with donors? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank Boja from Ghana. One thing that we have also observed with fighting corruption is about the delay, unnecessary delay in trial of corruption cases, especially those involving big fishes. The leaders, politicians, corporate leaders, and all that. The brother from Lesotho was talking about somebody being killed because they suspected that the suspects might have been part of it. It's the whole thing about the delay. As far as you are delaying, the suspect is strategizing, and they are always faster, swift than you. So to me, the best way is to be swift, strategic, and then ensure that you put confidence in the whistleblower. Because the more you delay, the more the confidence erodes. And for that matter, people may not report to you, even if they see, because they think that cases pending in court for 5 years, 10 years, and somebody steals a goat or a cow and goes in just one day. This is the differentiation we have between the citizen and those who are leading us. And this is what is causing a lot of us. So we must see the fight for corruption as a 100-meter race. You must be fast and swift than a marathon.
Okay, thank you very much. Not a question, but a comment. They talk about the collaboration and the engagement of citizens in fighting corruption. My contribution is that what is mostly important, especially in our African countries, is having an independent office which deals with corruption. A good case in point is that of South Africa, which has an independent office of the public protector. That kind of structure of the public protector office is more effective than using the justice system, because we have seen that it has been able to bring to book even the highest political leaders. It brought the Nkandla case by former President Jacob Zuma. Now also even the political will is also important in fighting corruption. The opposition parties, if they are willing to fight corruption, it becomes critical in Africa. Thank you very much.
There was one other comment.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup pour la parole. C'est Madame Bibiche de la RDC, membre de Femnet.
Attendez une minute. Oui.
Donc je disais, c'est Madame Bibiche de la RDC, membre de Femnet. Je voulais intervenir dans un bref minute concernant les problèmes de corruption dans notre pays. J'ai une préoccupation. La corruption dans notre pays, c'est comme de l'eau à boire. Et comme vous le savez, la République démocratique du Congo, dans le monde entier, c'est un pays qui est réputé en disant que c'est un pays riche. En obtenant beaucoup de richesses de la matière première que nous avons dans notre pays, ça nous amène à être encore pauvres. C'est parce que le gouvernement ne prenait pas ces dispositions. Ma préoccupation est de savoir quelles sont les dispositions de l'Union africaine par rapport à notre pays. Parce qu'avec notre richesse, c'est la femme maintenant qui est devenue victime. Nous avons des matières, les matières sont en train d'être exploitées pour être amenées à l'étranger, et maintenant ça nous retourne à des fabrications des armes. Et ces armes-là sont utilisées pour maintenant utiliser la femme comme une arme de guerre. Et maintenant, là, le gouvernement ne prend pas ses responsabilités. Maintenant, notre pays, il est signateur dans le processus de la corruption à l'Union africaine. Et voyant tout ça, c'est la femme qui est en train d'avoir des problèmes, et c'est la femme qui est victime de tout ça. Maintenant, quelle est la position de l'Union africaine par rapport à ces problèmes, avec nos matières qui sont exploitées par les pays étrangers, et ça nous retourne comme armes de guerre. Maintenant, on ne sait pas quelle est la disposition et quelle est la position de la femme, parce que la femme, là, elle est victime de tout ce qui se passe dans le pays. Donc, ma préoccupation est de savoir qu'est-ce que l'Union africaine a déjà pris comme disposition par rapport à cette situation de notre pays. Merci.
We're turning over to this side now. There are the 5 people who had put their hands up previously. There were 5 people who were already speaking, so I think we'll start the lady with the green hijab.
My name is Efetwa. I'm from Somalia. I'm GBV and gender specialist. Thank you so much, and I would like to thank all the panelists who presented well presentation. And last 2 days, we are talking about lots of policies, legislation, but not implemented. But as we are aware, AU member have a 55 member, and 40 members were ratified the Convention of Combating Corruption against, prevention and combating corruption. Those who were not ratified still, what does how AU can be support or put pressure to ratify the convention? Thank you, with implementation. And the other thing I want to talk is women protection. As we are aware, one about corruption is affecting women and men, especially those who are the most vulnerable people, like SGBV survivors. It's very difficult to report or look for assistance while it happened to the SGBV. So while they make a decision to look for assistance as legal aid, it's to asking them bribe, or if the perpetrator arrested, if he paid bribe, he will release the next day. So what AU has a criteria can put in place in women who are going through SGBV or GBV survivors. Thank you so much.
The next speaker, I think it's here at the top. Yep. Yes, the lady with the green hijab, please, and then we'll come to the point.
Thank you. I'm Jamila from Somalia.
So hold on, Madame in the front. There was a lady with a green hijab who had put her hand up first. So she'll speak first, and then we'll come to you.
Sorry.
For me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm Jamila from Somalia. As we know, we are talking about corruption, and everybody of us asking how to fight corruption. But we know the important thing is there is in Africa. And my question is how to start the implementation for fighting corruption. We need action, not only asking a question. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Madame in the green dress, please feel free.
civil, quer por parte dos governantes, dos atores políticos e de algumas agências de cooperação, como é que, do vosso ponto de vista, ou do seu ponto de vista particularmente, julga que se pode, de facto, trabalhar empoderando as organizações da sociedade civil para desempenharem o papel que os seus governantes, particularmente nos países em dificuldades e com maior nível de corrupção, como é que poderão ser empoderados para poderem dar melhor contributo no processo de combate à corrupção e fomento do desenvolvimento dos seus países. Muito obrigado e mais uma vez as minhas felicitações por esta brilhante intervenção.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to turn to the panel to offer some reactions.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I asked for that.
Yes, because we've already had 5 questions on this side, so I'm coming to you afterwards. So let's just give the panel an opportunity to react. I think most of them were comments. Some were questions about how is the AU challenging its members to live up to the conventions, and those who haven't joined. And the last question was about how to meaningfully engage with civil society. Oh, the Commissioner will take the first? Okay, all right. So we'll start with you, Madam Commissioner.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la modératrice. Je vous remercie pour votre modération et je félicite les panélistes. En fait, je voulais réagir avant que vous ne passiez la parole aux panélistes pour répondre à certaines questions, parce qu'il y a d'autres qui nous sont adressées en tant que commission de l'Union africaine. Lorsque je prends, il y a la représentante de RDC qui a parlé de la question des femmes, des ressources minières. Qu'est-ce que l'Union africaine prévoit pour cela? Je voudrais réagir sur 2 aspects. Un, effectivement, la République démocratique du Congo est un pays très riche, malheureusement victime aussi de ses richesses. Ce qui se passe lorsque le pays conclut des accords des mines, l'Union africaine ne fait pas partie de la conclusion de ces accords. Comment vous voulez que l'Union africaine aille régler des choses pour lesquelles elle n'a pas été impliquée? Ça, c'est un aspect. Et il n'y a pas de mécanisme qui prévoit que les États membres puissent, au moment de conclure des accords, faire appel à l'Union africaine. Lorsqu'il y a des difficultés, ce genre d'accord, il y a des procédures au plan international pour dénoncer les accords, pour trouver une solution. Je suis entièrement d'accord avec ma sœur. Lorsque les pays sont riches, il y a des exploitations de minerais. Ça ne profite pas à nos populations, malheureusement. C'est à nous tous, justement, d'ouvrir les yeux aux populations de ces pays, de prendre conscience que elles ont leur mot à dire dans l'exploitation de ces ressources. Et je suis d'accord, la corruption affecte nous, les femmes particulièrement, et puis nos enfants. L'Union africaine a essayé d'aider. Il y a des documents sur la question des ressources minières et il y a un centre sur cette question qui a été créé. Le centre sera basé en République de Guinée, à Conakry, pour permettre d'aider les États membres à faire face à cette situation. Il y a une aussi qui a demandé qu'est-ce que l'Union africaine fait pour les survivantes de harcèlement ou victimes de viol. C'est très triste. C'est très triste ce qui se passe. Si c'est au moment des conflits, l'Union est impliquée. C'est le cas d'ailleurs pour la République démocratique du Congo. J'y étais et tout juste quelques jours après cette réunion, je serai encore en RDC pour accompagner les frères congolais pour trouver une solution à la crise avec les élections le 23 décembre qui, nous espérons, seront des élections à mesure d'apporter la paix pour permettre à ce pays d'aller vers des tâches de développement. Les survivantes, nous avons nos différentes conventions et il y a des gens qui ont relevé le fait que nous avons des textes. ces textes ne sont pas respectés, ces textes ne sont pas domestiqués. Nous avons le protocole de Maputo qui prévoit tout concernant nos femmes, mais malheureusement, ce protocole, je vous assure, même il y a des pays qui ne veulent pas y adhérer. Ce n'est pas normal. Ça, on ne demande pas le ciel ou la terre à ces pays, on demande simplement, c'est un texte juridique, qu'on puisse respecter ce texte. Autre chose aussi, il y a une année qui a été consacrée à la femme et à la suite une décennie consacrée aux femmes avec un plan d'action. Je pense que si nous mettons en œuvre ces différentes conventions, ces différents documents, je pense que nous pourrons trouver une solution à ces questions. Dans les processus de paix, la question du harcèlement, des viols et autres ne peut pas être passée aux pertes et aux profits concernant les femmes. Non, il faut qu'une justice soit rendue aux femmes et l'Union africaine pousse à ce niveau lorsqu'il y a les processus de paix. Après les processus de paix, vous voyez des belligérants faire la paix, mais on oublie les femmes. Il faut que les femmes fassent partie de ces processus et on vient de créer, pendant que nous sommes ici, il y a les femmes médiatrices qui sont en réunion à Addis Abeba pour accompagner et trouver une solution justement à ces questions de viol et autres traumatismes occasionnés d'abord aux femmes et par la suite à tous ceux qui ont été victimes. C'est vous dire que l'Union africaine n'ignore pas ces aspects. Parfois, c'est la mise en œuvre qui pose problème. Et si et seulement si les acteurs au conflit veulent accepter et réparer justement les torts subis. Nous accompagnons, nous sommes mobilisés et nous-mêmes en tant que femmes, on a cet engagement de trouver une solution pour éviter que cela ne se répète. Voilà un peu le commentaire que je voulais faire. Ce sont des questions qui ne sont pas pour les panélistes. J'ai tenu aussi à apporter ma petite contribution en vous félicitant pour vos brillants exposés. Merci.
So I turn now to the panelists to offer some reaction there about effective engagement of civil society, working with donors, and also how to create space for civil society. I think there was a question there. The other two were really remarks. I think the two that I picked up was that South Africa has a model that perhaps we can share that as a best practice with other countries, and Cape Verde as well. But I just, if anyone else has comments or reactions from the panel before we turn back to the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding the manner in which we can empower citizens and civil society organizations to participate fully in the fight against corruption, as I mentioned earlier on, I think it is important for us to educate our citizens, make them realize that corruption affects each and every one of us. And I know that in the case of the DCEC, they have a public education unit. I don't know how effective it is, but I think there's, at least its existence indicates that there's that attempt or willingness to raise awareness on the part of the citizens. But let us not forget that politicians and administrators don't like to be accountable. And therefore, they may deliberately decide not to make a concerted effort of raising awareness on the part of the citizens so that they forever remain dormant or docile. They don't take them to task. They don't hold them accountable for things that they do. And my contention would be that it is the responsibility of the government of the day to give citizens the weapon that they need, and that weapon is education. So without education, the citizens wouldn't know what to do. They will believe that everything that is done, either by politicians or administrators, is okay. And the same applies to civil society organizations. As one of our colleagues indicated earlier on, they have different agendas. And for as long as they do not offend the government of the day, it's okay. But I think they should also be reminded of the important responsibility they have of promoting accountability, transparency, and the fight against corruption. So my contribution will be that we need to empower citizens, we need to remind civil society organizations of the responsibility that they have, and we empower citizens through education. Without education, we won't go anywhere. And again, I think, as I mentioned right at the beginning of our discussion, that there is need for us to build capacity. If we have 10 or 20 organizations locally, and they are all weak, they are all working they're not cooperating, then we will never go anywhere. If we don't have that policy that brings them together, we will never go anywhere.
There have been a number of questions that have been asked, and I think Honorable Kuyot was raising an issue about CSOs having multiple agenda. I think one of the beauties of civil society organization is that we do realize in the course of our work the intersectionality of a lot of issues. So for instance, you will not go to speak to women about their rights and find them hungry and talk to them when they've not eaten. So I actually do not think that it's a challenge that CSOs, rather citizens in their different formations, can actually be willing to push multiple agenda. And I think in the spirit of pushing back, I think a lot of the times the work that civil society organizations do is actually the mandate of governments. So when civil society come in, they're actually coming in as a stopgap measure. And so I think a lot of support needs to be rendered there. There's been a question around CSOs not having resources and therefore not being sustainable. Again, starting from the point of view that a lot of the assignments they're undertaking are actually the responsibility of the government. I think that where we've discussed different instruments and protocols, creating platforms for civil society, for public engagement, then the fight against corruption must, as a primary source, be financed by governments of the day. And then everybody else who is supporting the fight is actually a complementary partner. I agree that fighting corruption requires local approaches. I think we saw a good case study on that yesterday. There's a question that I think Moses was asking about: what kind of strategies do we need to engage, to put in place when engaging with citizens, and that sometimes they vote against their own interests? I think we've discussed extensively since Monday, they need to build consciousness, and I will not browbeat the point because I think my fellow panel member has already spoken about education. So building the consciousness of citizens to actually realize the impact of corruption and what they can do about it. I think the partnership with donors requires a lot of clarity, that as the civil society organizations, as the citizen in the formation that you're working in, being very clear about the purpose that you're serving, the area that you're working in, what you're doing, what your philosophical underpinnings are, because I think that clarity really informs a lot of the partnerships that we engage in. And we must not be fooled. I think we've also been discussing the political economy of corruption. A lot of the countries who are the headquarters of many of the NGOs that actually resource civil society in Africa have other interests because of the governments that they come from. So I think clarity on the part of African civil society organizations is very critical. I think those are the ones. Yeah, I think I will stop there. And to my sister in the DRC, I think with the understanding that fighting corruption, fighting all forms of abuse, the primary stakeholder is the citizens. We've been calling a lot for solidarity across the continent of citizens, so that when the women in DRC are being abused, it should be the concern of all of us, even in the other countries. So in addition to what the Commissioner has said, that's the only thing I would want to add to that.
Very much, Madam Moderator. Just two questions that I'm going to tackle. The delay in dealing with corruption cases, that is very serious, and it's always counterproductive, in the sense that the impact which is intended for prosecuting the criminal end up not being felt because it took too long. Corruption cases are meant to have an impact. That is one of the most important things, that it should have an impact. The public, the society should see what has been done. But if it takes 3 years, 4 to 5 years without being heard, it's as good as nothing. Therefore, one would encourage that perhaps one of the important things is to consider establishing what? Special tribunals to look into corruption cases. Secondly, you may have that tribunals, or at least have individual magistrates or judges who are earmarked for dealing with corruption cases. But there is an important issue there. You don't just earmark them, they should be trained. I have to tell you that the law is a very conservative discipline. If you don't, it's as good as nothing, because they would not understand about the cybercrime, they would not understand about the evidence, and they would be asking for what? For documentary evidence where you cannot produce one. So they have to be trained. Our government should be prepared to commit funds to train the magistrates and judges to deal with corruption cases. And I think that is the only way. You can't take corruption case and put it in the usual mill of the judicial system. It is not going to work. It is not going to help us. So it is very important. Another thing which we have come across is this one of asset recovery, which we have seen that, we have realized that corrupt people would go for public assets, they go for public funds and things like that, play into the public purse. What do? We have to embark on asset recovery. Asset recovery or asset forfeiture without conviction. Because criminal case takes law. Then if you go for the assets, it's faster. That's why it is very important to make sure that your prosecutors, your magistrates are trained. In Lesotho, we have started it now. I think it's working for us. It's working for us because we make it impossible for the criminal to use the very same asset to fight you. Dispossess him of the stolen assets and let him fight his wars on his own. So that is very, very much important. And in the need for cooperation, we have touched on cooperation. Bilateral cooperation, well, that's fine, but remember, good people, majority of African countries I know, they have ratified UN Convention Against Corruption. And Article 46 actually calls upon the member states to at least overlook this thing of bilateral, but use that convention as what? As an instrument for cooperation. So I'm calling upon all of us, please, let's try to cooperate with each other and stop asking for so many things like bilaterals and things like that, because we are member states in the UN Convention Against Corruption. Thank you, Madam.
All right, so the next round of questions, now the gentleman from ECOSOC. Yes, you, sir, and then the lady with the blue dress and then the white. Yes, so we'll take those 4 questions first.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the... I'm Hamid bin Brahim. I'm speaking for ECOSOC. First, I want to thank you and thank the organizer for giving the civil society this wonderful platform to interact with different stakeholders on this very important issue. Secondly, I want to go back to the discussion with Hamza yesterday and to point out that it was discussed and evaluated on a first degree. The second degree to see this experience of follow the money is that it is a cross-cutting case to show relevant for the Advisory Board on Corruption and for the Peace and Security Council of the African Union and for the Political Department of the African Union. And it is deeply related to another target of the African Union of 2020 silencing the guns, because this example shows us how to cut the grass under the feet of those who are manipulating the poor people and using the frustration of poor people to engage them in fundamentalist activities, be it Muslim fundamentalist activities like in Nigeria with Boko Haram, or the Soldiers of the Lord in Uganda, or using them regardless of their religious obedience, using them in transborder criminality activities. So this case of using very few means to reach such a huge impact is very important to be showcased in the fight against fundamentalism and against extremist movement. Allow me now to speak not in the name of ECOSOC, but in my name as a Tunisian. I'll give you two points about tracking illegally transferred money in different countries. The experience of Tunisia after the Arab Spring or the revolution in Tunisia showed us that it is very difficult and it is an odyssey to try to get the money back. It's like the example of Nigeria. It's not always because there is not a political will in the other side, be it in Europe or in Arab countries or wherever the money is. It's because of these criminals uses the rule of law systems to hide behind. Because when you go to Switzerland to ask for the money back, of course they can't just give you a transfer. They will ask you to respect the rules of the justice there and to bring a judgment from your own country. To get a judgment from Tunisia, for example, to get the money from the family of Ben Ali, it took 2-3 years. And ask about the lawyers they engaged to get this money out of the countries before you get your judgment. Now to an example of the Pan-African solidarities against thieves. We managed in Tunisia to have a judgment against the son-in-law of the President Ben Ali, who is in an African country now. When our government was talking to this country, who ratified the Anti-Corruption Convention of the UN and of the African Union, they said, it's good to have a judgment, and we understand your position, but we can do nothing. Why? Because we don't extradite our citizens. The guy with his billions got the citizenship of this country, of this brother country, and he is having a wonderful life, and he just changed the 4 months spring-summer time in Tunisia with a 12-month spring-summer time in this wonderful country. So it gives you an example how difficult it is to get this money back. And I thank you.
Thank you. Next. Yes, there's a lady in the blue.
anti-corruption and good governance within an integrated approach in terms of involving all the stakeholders such as civil society, public administration, private sector within this strategy, with the adoption of an annually action plan and with an assessment every 2 years, to assess the outcomes of this strategy. This is my proposal, and I am convinced that this strategy will create a certain synergy between the states and all the donors that are working in the field of anti-corruption. Why not in the coming few days we will speak about eradication of corruption in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll end with the lady from ABC.
Thank you so much. My name is Charity Chimunya. I'm the Executive Secretary of the African Union Advisory Board on Corruption. Mine is more of a comment in relation to some of the concerns that came from the participants. For instance, DRC, there was an issue also from Tunisia and Cape Verde. Now, starting with perhaps Cape Verde, indeed, we note the good reports that we've been having. And for us as the African Union Advisory Board, we would want Cape Verde to sort of ratify the convention so that it gives us as a board an entry point to engage further with them. And then we can get those good practices that have made them one of the best performing countries on the continent, so that then we can take those to other countries. And then in terms of the DRC also, they signed the convention in 2003, but that was it. They haven't yet ratified. Would continue to engage with the government there for the ratification of the convention, and perhaps call upon civil society organizations within DRC to be able to lobby for the ratification of the convention. And for Tunisia as well, they signed the convention in 2013, but they haven't yet ratified. So the more member states of the African Union ratify the convention, the easier it is for us as a board to engage further with them in other issues. For instance, even in terms of the illicit financial flows and all these, right now we have a declaration that was done by the heads of state in the Nouakchott summit, where they recommitted themselves to tackle the issue of illicit financial flows. So the more countries we have signing up to the convention, the more platforms we create for us to engage further and interrogate the issues further in respective countries. So that's what I thought I should comment on. And perhaps on the last speaker just before me, she talked of perhaps coming up with an African anti-corruption strategy and all. These are some of the key issues we are looking at as an outcome of Project 2018, because what we are aiming to do actually is to use Project 2018 as a base, as a stepping stone. We want the momentum that has been gained during this year in as far as fighting corruption is concerned to even go further for the coming years. So we'll be interrogating all these various aspects, perhaps coming up with a comprehensive strategy. But at the moment, I think the one thing that connects all of us together in this fight is the convention, and we'll continue to call upon member states to ratify. And actually, even in terms of working with the champion for the theme of the year, President Buhari, he will be, I'm sure, sending out letters to his peers to encourage them to ratify the convention. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I know we're already at time, but I wanted to recognize a few speakers here. If you'll indulge us, we'll be a little late for the break, but if we can have maybe 2 or 3, I see there are 2 hands here. There's 3, 4. So I'm going to recognize 5 people, and then we have to turn to the panel to close. So the gentleman who's standing, then there's a gentleman behind him, and then you, sir, in the black suit, and the lady in the green dress, and then I think you already spoke, sir, so I'll turn to you in the front. Okay. Yes, please.
Okay. Merci beaucoup. Je vais parler français. Je souhaite que vous prenez votre casque pour m'écouter. Je m'appelle Dr Jean-Baptiste Elias. Je suis le président de l'Autorité nationale de lutte contre la corruption du Bénin. J'ai été président du Conseil de l'Union africaine sur la prévention et la lutte contre la corruption. Je remercie d'abord le gouvernement botswanais de nous avoir accueillis ici à Gaborone. Et je remercie les organisateurs de cet atelier. Depuis 3 jours, nous essayons de voir comment nous allons faire pour vaincre la corruption en faisant une option viable pour la transformation de l'Afrique. Il y a eu beaucoup d'expériences qui ont été présentées. Moi, j'estime modestement qu'il faudrait qu'à la fin de cet atelier, tous les participants puissent prendre l'engagement de faire quelque chose pour que la lutte contre la corruption bouge effectivement en Afrique. Nous avons une convention de l'Union africaine sur la lutte contre la corruption.
Pardon, can you please be very brief because we need to accommodate a lot of people to speak.
I finish.
Okay.
15 pays ne l'ont pas encore ratifié. La plupart de ces pays sont dans la salle ici. Si tous ceux qui viennent de ces pays peuvent travailler à faire en sorte que leur pays puisse ratifier, nous aurons déjà fait un pas. Deuxième et dernier élément, que nous faisions en sorte qu'il y ait un travail de synergie entre le gouvernement, le Parlement, le secteur privé et la société civile pour que les procédures soient respectées. Nous aurons contribué beaucoup à la diminution de la corruption en Afrique.
Merci. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Transparency Morocco would like to share an experience. Many participants have raised the question of harassment and the impact of sexual corruption on women. Transparency Morocco has been working on that issue since 2017 with many partners as the Association of International Women Judges, the Moroccan Association of Women Judges, and other partners. And these items has been able to raise the interest of people till that now we are pushing the amendment of the law in order to have the necessary action against people who will commit this problem. Well, Transparency Morocco is keen to share this experience with other countries who would like to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Lady in the green dress, do you still want to make your intervention?
Merci beaucoup. Je vais parler aussi. Alors, je me perds un peu. Je peux y aller? OK. Ce que je voudrais dire, c'est que c'est vrai qu'on sent qu'il y a un besoin de renforcer les citoyens au cœur de la gouvernance démocratique en Afrique. Parce que j'ai comme l'impression que l'Union africaine est assez loin des populations des fois. Aujourd'hui, quand il y a un problème dans un pays, vous rencontrez des gens partout qui disent « Vous, chez vous, vous avez un problème, hein? Vous, chez vous, ça ne va pas, hein? Vous, votre président, il est fort, hein? Vous, votre président, il est ci, il est ci. » Aujourd'hui, où est passée la solidarité africaine? Celui-là même qui permet au peuple de pouvoir s'entraider et de pouvoir justement garantir la sécurité des citoyens. Aujourd'hui, il faut que l'Union africaine puisse développer des mécanismes clairs qui protègent les citoyens. Il faut que les citoyens arrivent à se sentir en sécurité avant tout. Parce que le défi pour lutter contre la corruption, c'est la sécurité de ceux qui dénoncent justement. Et quand dans un pays, il n'y a même pas de liberté d'expression, les citoyens sont confinés, n'arrivent pas à exprimer ce qui les arrive clairement. Je trouve qu'il y a un problème. Il faut avoir ce mécanisme-là qui identifie clairement la souffrance, qui mesure la souffrance des populations. Pour rappel, je viens du Togo et je travaille à la concertation nationale de la société civile du Togo. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Monsieur, in the front.
Thank you very much. Concerning the empowerment of women, it is simply to express my appreciation to the point that has been raised. The participation of women in social, economic, social activities is unquestionable. Just to share the experience of the current reform that has been taken in our country, among the 20 ministerial positions, 10 of the ministerial positions were occupied by the women. The President of the Republic is also a woman. The President of the Supreme Court is also a woman. And the chairperson of the electoral board of the country is a woman. So they are appointed not merely by their being a woman, but they're competent enough. They can deliver the assignments that they have been given. It is better without, we know that without the participation, without the full engagement and participation of a woman, we can't realize the dream of Africans or the dream of our countries. Therefore, the empowerment of women has to be a top agenda that we should address in our every activity. The second point that I want to contribute is to the African Advisory Board on Anti-Corruption. You know, the issue of extradition, the cooperation, and mutual legal assistance is already there in the convention. So we need to focus on the fundamental factors that hinders the implementation. I encourage them to assess, to make an assessment to identify the basic factors that hinder the implementation of the basic instruments in relation to corruption. The other issue is, I think it is every country has its own specific best practices. We are always criticizing the failure, that is fine. We are maximizing the failure of the countries in regard to the fight against corruption. Even though we are maximizing the failures or the gaps, we have also some achievements that we can't deny. Therefore, I encourage the advisory board to look at different best practices across the continent and to bring them together and to scale up to the full application of to its maximum application at continental level. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those interventions. So we are very late. So as the moderator, I'm going to ask if there are any burning last, because most of these were comments, so I don't know if anyone on the panel really wants to react, or some of them were challenges to the advisory board. I'm curious if do you have any last comments? Very last.
Thank you very much, madam. I think the issue of Tunisia really touched my heart because I understand the problem that he has. It's very pathetic indeed. Then I would really urge you to work on mechanism of encouraging member states to cooperate with each other. Really, that is very important. I think we should work on that one. And to answer just the question from our gentleman there, that we in Lesotho have got a national anti-corruption strategy, which we are really trying by all means to implement. And if time allowing, we would share with you what we are doing. Thank you.
All right, so thank you to everyone. We hope to stimulate a conversation, which I think we did. It's clear that we have the spirit of cooperation, and I'm encouraged by the reaction from the advisory board as well as the AU Commission. I think that there's still room to continue this conversation over the break and obviously throughout the rest of the day. I'm struck that we still, even though we have the spirit, the implementation is still very far from where we really want to be. So in terms of our cooperation, I think the challenge is to think about how we're showing up in these conversations, how our organizations are living up to these expectations, challenge the AU to do better. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much to the panel, Dr. Mutsusi, Kijala Shako, Vera, and of course, DG Matsuso. Thank you so very much. Please, you can take your leave. We'll have a photo session for 4 of you. And while we're doing that, just to announce that we will now go on break for 15 minutes. And then we will then take the second session of the day, which is looking at partnerships and collaboration outside with the continent, Africa, and the international community. And of course with international organizations and all of it. We've had a lot of comments from the sessions yesterday and even from this particular panel today on the issue of collaboration with international partners, international our friends from the North and the Global South and even Europe. And I think that it is important that the next session we also explore that. So now we go for tea break, and then we'll see in 15 minutes, that will be 11:30. There was a slight mistake on the program. The time is wrong. The correct timing is 11:30 to 1:30 for the next session. So now we go for tea break. Thank you very much.